Welcome to today's webinar on mental illness. It is not a taboo topic. I'd like to introduce Tina Cao. She's a licensed professional counselor associate with a unique mix of life experience and expertise in her field. She works with individuals, couples, and families, and she particularly enjoys guiding families through the challenges of severe mental illness. Tina volunteers with the National Alliance for Mental Illness, also known as NAMI, and is a certified facilitator of their family-to-family education program. Tina, how long have you been advocating in the field of mental health, and how many topics or presentations do you think you've given on the topic?
Thanks, Liz. I have been advocating for mental health for over 10 years and have conducted 3 workshops lasting 8 to 12 weeks each, along with about 9 seminars. These efforts aim to educate the family and friends of those with mental illness using resources from NAMI.
Wow, that's beautiful. So when we talk about severe mental illness or mental illness, what are we talking about?
Well, severe mental illness refers to a range of mental health disorders that significantly impair an individual's ability to function in daily life. These disorders can cause severe disruptions in thinking, behavior, mood, and relationships. Some behavior changes that may occur due to mental illness includes irritable, critical, or hostile, or behavior that falls outside of the social norms, or spreading and responding in a ways that aren't logical or practical. Also, being extremely stubborn, expressing rage, or having extreme periods of sudden, uncontrollable anger. Well, some behaviors that individuals with mental illness may lose include being able to express joy. They would lose that. They will lose their sense of humor. They no longer enjoy family or friends as they used to. They are not able to cope with minor problems, and so on.
Are there several different types of mental illness?
Yes, there are several types of severe mental illness, each characterized by distinct symptoms and challenges. Severe mental illnesses typically include disorders such as schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, major depressive disorder, and severe anxiety disorders. Schizophrenia, for instance, is marked by disruptions in thought processes, perceptions, emotional responsiveness, and social interactions. Individuals with this disorder may experience hallucinations, delusions, and significant cognitive impairments that can severely impact their daily functioning. Bipolar disorder, on the other hand, is another severe mental illness characterized by extreme mood swings, ranging from manic highs to depressive lows. These episodes can lead to risky behaviors during manic phases and debilitating sadness or hopelessness during depressive episodes. And major depressive disorder, on the other hand, primarily involves persistent feelings of sadness, loss of interest in activities, and various physical symptoms such as fatigue and changes in sleep patterns. Severe anxiety disorder, including panic disorder and obsessive compulsive disorder, can also significantly affect a person's life, leading to overwhelming episodes of fear and compulsive behaviors. Each of these conditions requires careful diagnosis and treatment, often involving a combination of medication, therapy, and support to help the individuals manage their symptoms and improve their quality of life.
Yeah, it sounds like there are many different types of mental illness that really affect different people strongly, you know.
Yes.
How can somebody know if their loved one or they themselves are suffering from a mental illness? What are some warning signs?
Yeah, recognizing the signs of severe mental illness can be very challenging, as symptoms often vary widely from person to person. However, there are some common indicators that suggest someone is struggling. For instance, significant changes in mood, behavior, or personality can be a red flag. If a person exhibits extreme fluctuations in mood, such as irritability or heightened anxiety, it may be a sign of an underlying issue. Additionally, withdrawal from social activities, a decline in academic or work performance, and a loss of interest in previously enjoyed hobbies can also indicate that something is missing.
Hmm.
Yeah. You might also notice changes in appetite or sleep patterns, leading
Mhm.
to noticeable weight loss or gain and chronic fatigue.
Mm.
Yeah, and they might also express feelings of hopelessness or worthlessness, which can particularly concerning. In more severe cases, signs such as hallucinations, delusions, or disorganized thinking may surface, especially in conditions like schizophrenia. These symptoms can severely impair an individual's ability to function in daily life.
Mm.
And, it's essential for the loved ones to approach the situation with care and compassion. Have open conversations about the mental health can help the person with this illness feel supported and understood, and encourage them to seek professional help. Early intervention can significantly improve the outcomes, allowing them
Mhm.
to receive the support and treatment needed to manage their condition effectively.
So if I'm seeing somebody who has usually is calm and I'm used to seeing them in a certain manner or behavior, and then all of a sudden they seem to be acting in a different way, maybe that would be.
Yeah, well, I mean, we normal, right? We normal rational people do act like that, but it had to be kind of consistent in their behavior. So if like tomorrow they were acting something weird, not the same person that we used to see, we'll just wait a little bit to see is that consistent? Is it several days or week? And that's when you might want to focus, especially with loved one. You kind of just wanted to check in with them.
Great, Tina. So what I was hearing you say was there's different types of mental illnesses that act in different ways. So if somebody's behaving kind of in an erratic way that they used to be in one, they're usually a certain way, and then all of a sudden they're behaving in a different manner, or they're being incoherent, or they're being much more anxious than they usually are, or they're being very much more depressed. Those are different types of mental illnesses that might be happening to the person, and they probably need some help, right?
Yeah, there's like I mentioned earlier, there's many, but some of those, there's basic sign you noted to see, like I mentioned earlier, I think I'm normal, right? Sometimes I can be very irritable. And if I keep doing that
Everybody
for
can,
a
yeah.
few days, a few weeks, my family may bring that up, and talk to me. I hope.
Yeah.
So yeah, and also some diagnoses we don't diagnose and give it a name until maybe some several weeks or a couple of months or 3 months or 6 months. But if early sign, we recognize that and maybe go to your even primary care physician and it might be just something in your mood change. So we can't just say someone have that symptom, say, oh, you are mentally ill. It's not the right approach to do.
Mhm. Yeah. What are some good things to do if I'm noticing that my loved one is behaving in a different manner, or maybe I think that they might be affected um, by one of these symptoms or one of these conditions?
Well, so I want to talk about what some warning sign that loved one, we want to see that warning sign when our loved one have that severe mental illness, right? Um, to recognize those signs is really crucial in early interventions and support. I sometimes, because living with my son, I can recognize sign in people and they don't want to seek for help. And the
Mhm.
longer they go without help is more severe, harder to help treat the symptoms.
Mhm.
One of the most common indicators is uh, significant change in mood or behavior. You know, um, for someone who was once vibrant and engaged and suddenly become withdrawn or sad,
Mhm.
we might pay attention with that to that. Other sign could be neglecting your personal hygiene. They
Mhm.
decline to their work performance decline. I mean, to a point that they could get fired, right? Or
Mhm.
the loss of interest in previously activities that they enjoy. You know.
Mhm.
So those warning signs could be physical or cognitive symptoms that
Mhm.
can manifest in as the illness progresses. These might include changes in sleep patterns. And, I would mention sleep patterns all the time because if the person didn't have enough sleep or can stay up a day or two doing things, that really should be a main trigger for you to notice. And I will share with you why I know that, right?
Mhm.
Like insomnia or excessive sleeping, change in their appetites or unexplained physical complaints, and the cognitive signs like difficulty in concentrating, disorganized thinking, or unusual beliefs that seem detached from reality can indicate that this is a serious mental health issues.
Mhm.
So if a loved one expresses feelings of hopelessness, worthlessness, or even talks about self-harm or suicide, these are critical red flags that requires immediate attention for intervention.
Mm. Are there things that we shouldn't do if we're a family member and we have someone in our family that is suffering from a mental illness?
Yeah, there are things that we tend to give advice. Another thing is like we don't give advice for someone who don't ask for advice, right? When we
Yeah, that's hard
notice,
to do sometimes, but
yeah,
yeah, we shouldn't, right? It's
right.
not usually
And
well received.
right. But when we notice our loved one have the symptom, we still approach, they still don't want to advise, but we have to approach in a different way that they can uh, take our advice in a way that supporting their condition. So when someone with severe mental illness, it's essential to avoid behaviors that may worsen their conditions or strain your relationship. One critical aspect is to refrain from making dismissive or invalidating comments about their feelings.
Mm,
Statements like, just think positive or it's not that bad can
mhm,
minimize their experiences and lead to feelings of isolation. So
mm,
instead, focus on being empathetic and acknowledging their struggles. You might
mm,
say, I can see you are struggling, you're going through difficult times, and I'm here to support you if you need if you need me. So, avoid taking that behavior too personally or reacting with frustration. And everything I share here is what I've gone through with my son. He's been diagnosed like for 15 years. So sometime my husband would say, I don't think this mental illness. I think this him being rude or the way he said, right? So trust me, don't take any of this personally. I mean, get
mhm,
him on the right medications. Severe mental illness can lead to mood swings, which might be challenging to cope with. For
mhm,
instance, if your loved one withdraws from social interactions or reacts negatively to your attempts to help, try not to take it personally. Instead of expressing anger or disappointment, approach them with understanding, like saying, I'm here whenever you're ready to talk, and we can spend time together. you know, it's crucial not to pressure them into activities or conversations that they are not ready for. And this can increase their anxiety and distress. There's the other area that I want to bring in is, you know, what things that are good if my loved one, things that good to do if my loved one has severe mental illness.
mhm,
So do open communications, set aside regular time to talk, you know,
mm,
ensure that your loved one know that, you can talk, you're not going to give any judgments. You just want to know about how they feel, right? So
mhm,
you can educate yourself, like for me, I was in denial mode for a long time. I said, okay, take me to the doctor, take your medications. I'm just like, I feel like avoiding it, it'll go away, right?
mhm,
So educate yourself because you want to explain to your family about the illness so that they can support them, be more understanding, be more patient. For them dealing with the illness, they can have good and bad days, just like us.
mhm,
If we think we're normal, we can have good and bad day. But for them, bad day can be in the part that we don't understand. So understand that, okay, this is something they're going through, they're dealing with, we don't understand. Let's learn more about this so we can respond with empathy rather than frustration. For example, say, I understand that today is really tough. And again, I'm here for you. Okay.
Tina, what you just shared sounds like a very important part too. Like as a family member of someone, especially if it's one of your children, it sounds like you have to go through your own process of grief, like grief and acceptance of all the dreams that you had for that child, all the things that you thought that they would achieve in life, or right, in order to come to a place where you accept them as they are, take their good days, take their bad days, and just can relate to them on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Are there things that people might fear regarding this topic?
Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
People often fear about this severe mental illness because of the misunderstanding and negative stereotypes around it. Many people think that individuals with this severe mental health issue might act unpredictably or even act violently. My son, he just he never really, uh, they know how to control themselves. And even, people with, that's not diagnosed with illness, the way they act violent. So it doesn't mean that people with this mental illness are violent. That's absolutely not true. So this fear is, sometimes fueled by the media, right? So, which often portrays people with mental illness in a negative light. For example, when there are news stories about violent incidents linked to mental illness, it leads people to believe that all individuals with these conditions are dangerous. And as a result, many of them kind of hesitate to go seek help for themselves or for their loved one because they fear of the judgment, of the stigma.
Mhm.
Um, and then another common fear is the worry about losing independence or control when dealing with severe mental illness. They may avoid taking medications because they believe that, by taking medications, I am confirming that I am mentally ill.
Mm.
So if avoiding medications mean that I'm not ill, I'm not taking those medications, right? So fear
Mhm.
fear of the mental illness make people doing things that might not be beneficial to their well-being, their health, you know,
Mhm.
and families and friends might be concerned that their loved ones could struggle to take care of themselves or manage a daily task. For instance, condition like schizophrenia or severe depressions can make it hard for someone to hold a job or maintain relationships. So
Mhm.
this unpredictability can create anxiety for both the individuals affected by the illness and their families because they may worry about what the future holds with the illness, like including the possibility that their loved one may change in ways it's hard to accept. Back when my first son first diagnosed, I went to the NAMI, that family, the 12 weeks class then.
Mhm.
It's kind of like, is my son able to do? I mean, he was in the school, university,
Mhm.
second year to be a pharmacist,
Mm.
and he now with this diagnosed this illness. And I kind of lose hope. I'm like, maybe
Mm.
he might just doing better, but I don't know what he can do. But during the seminar, during the class that I attend, there's this man. He's in his 60s, come and then share about advocate for mental illness. And
Mhm.
at the end of his talk to our class, he said, I am a lawyer. And 30 years ago, I mean, when I was in my 30s, I have two practices. I have two law firms. I'm married, have beautiful daughter. And when I was diagnosed, I didn't want to be labeled mental illness. So he lived on the street for 5 years. And then,
Mm.
sometime Nicole, he'll go into the homes for the homeless home shelter, and someone kind of noticed and help him. So he went back, renew his law license, and be an advocate for people with mental illness that to help them get the benefits. With that person, give me hope. I said, okay, my son can get back to normal because I do know people with the illness, you know, a doctor. I know a pharmacist. I know people with, with really lucrative careers have the illness, and
Mhm.
nobody knows, and you don't have
Mhm.
to tell them about your illness. I mean, your employer cannot force you to do that.
Mm. That's such great information, Tina. Do you have any more practical advice for parents or loved ones with mental illness?
Yeah, the first step that I would recommend, the first thing I recommend is please educate yourself about the mental illness conditions. Understanding what your loved one is going through,
Mhm.
can better help you to provide, the best support for them. looking into resources such as NAMI, books or support groups, and focus on their specific mental health issues. Like you can look into if your loved one had PTSD or schizophrenia or bipolar disorder. Look into that issues and try to understand. Join a support group. They can share information that you can support your loved one. Another key aspect is to maintain a routine, to offer stability in your loved one daily lives. People with severe mental illness often benefits from having a structured daily schedule, which include like regular meal times, sleep times, or activities. By encourage our loved one to engage in self-care activities like exercise, go back to the hobbies that they liked before they got sick, or just time to relax. Because these can help improve their mental health. And for those of you who are caretakers, don't forget to take care of yourself. Don't just put in
Mm.
so much energy to support them, and then we kind of get exhausted. I know that I just focus so much in them, and I get really exhausted. Just like when we travel, right? On the airplane, it say when the mask fall down, don't put it on there, your child first, put it on yourself, because what if I put the mask on my child and then I pass out? What good would that be, right? So,
Mhm.
as therapists, Liz and I, we always tell our client to take care of your mental health. Set aside time to take care of yourself, because until you are well, you can support your loved one better.
That is such a great point. Yeah, and sometimes it requires a lot. It requires a lot to get your own self-care, to plan your own self-care, and to make the time, right, when you're caring for somebody else. So, but it's worth it and it's important. Uh,
Yeah.
what about, Tina, what about the Vietnamese community? Do you have any particular suggestions? Because I can imagine that the stigma is pretty strong in that community. I mean, it's strong everywhere, but even stronger, I would imagine there. Mm.
Yeah, I the terms, like, before I would say crazy, but actually if I look at the more precise translation, is more like a lunatic. If you have a
Mm.
mental issues, like they would categorize you as a lunatic. And that's really, to be labeled as lunatics, I don't want to be associated with, I don't want to let people know that my family member is a lunatic, right? We don't
Right.
want people to know. And so we keep at home and we just don't seek for help, because people knows, what would they say? I don't feel that way anymore. I mean, like my husband, he just feel like when my son first got diagnosed, he just shut off the connection with his friends, like for I think maybe good 5 years. That,
Mm.
what did I do wrong? And
Mhm.
we don't cause that, and it's not something they did that caused that. So don't blame yourself for it. So for, when my son was diagnosed, exactly this month is exactly 15 years ago.
Mm.
I was a professional in corporate world, doing very well, but so I focus on my job, and so I avoid discussing this. So I thought, we forget about it. He'll get better, right? That's what I was hoping for. So, if I could go back in time, in counseling, we don't say if, go back, right? I mean, this is like, if we go back, if I would go back, I would spend more time on learning about this condition to help my family understand and help my son, you know, uh, you know, give more empathy to him so he wouldn't feel like isolated. For example, when we experience a headache, right, we take medication like Tylenol to
Mhm.
alleviate the pain. So similarly, mental illness kind of often arises from the chemical imbalance in the brain. So we use specific medications to help restore that balance, right? So with the appropriate medications, individual can lead a more meaningful and fulfilling daily lives. So there's no reason to feel ashamed of a loved one with mental health.
One last question, and then we'll move into our questions and answers, Tina.
Okay.
From a faith perspective, as a Catholic, how does our perspective differ than maybe a secular therapist on the issue of mental illness?
Yeah, I love working with our counseling Rejoice and Laetare because I love to share about Christ, right? So we in the session we all started out with a prayer, right? Reflection. For example, if my client is struggling with anxiety, I might say like I ask them to pray for peace and guidance. Discussing how their faith can serve as a source of strength during the difficult times. When I assess a client with mental health, um, we ask questions that explore not only their emotional and physical symptoms, but we also ask about their spiritual beliefs. For instance, if a client is dealing with depression, I might explore how their faith or spiritual practices such as attending mass, praying the rosary would impact their mood and sense of hope. So everything I share is what I've gone through. So I share the walk that I walk, right? So for those that facing moral dilemmas such as deciding whether to enter into the relationship that conflicts with their values, I would help them reflect on their beliefs and teaching of the church. For example, I might guide the client through the discussion of virtues of love, respect, and fidelity, to help them weigh their options in light of their faith. So our guidance can help them make decisions that align with their moral framework. And another thing is, mental illness, this one, the stigma, right? Therapists, we can educate them about more our church perspective in mental health to help our clients understand that mental illness is not a personal failing, but mental health condition that deserves compassion. If a client express fear about being judged by their faith community, I can share that the stories about the saints. There are saints that have mental illness too. Like for example, Saint Difna. She that's a patron saint of mental illness. And I think you might familiar with Saint Ignatius of Loyola. He's a founder of the Jesuits. He also suffered from mental illness. So they suffer, and we know that God didn't isolate the saint out, and we suffer. So just know that it's more like if, like I would share with my client, that sometimes the suffering is more like an invitation from God to share in His intimacy. So they feel like, okay, that's an invitation. Yeah, let me go deeper into that intimacy with Christ. And with secular world, there's no way I can pray unless the client asks to pray, right? I
Mhm.
can't share all these things. So it's really great that I can, share the love of Christ. So help them deal with, uh, you know, they are the person as the person that God create them, with the dignity of the person created in the image of God, right?
Well, thank you, Tina. Thank you. This will conclude the presentation portion of our webinar today. Now we're going to move into question and answers.